In this video, we are building this triangle transition in DaVinci Resolve using Fusion. No plugins, no extra tools, just built-in nodes. What happens is pretty simple. A triangle shape gets repeated into a full pattern, and that pattern is used to reveal the incoming clip. So even though the final result looks a bit more advanced, the logic behind it is actually very clean. All right, let's break it down. Before doing anything, it helps to understand the overall flow. This setup has a few main parts. First, there is the triangle shape. Then, that shape gets turned into a grid. After that, a second version of the grid gets transformed and merged in. Then the whole triangle pattern gets rendered. And finally, that rendered result is used to control how the incoming clip shows up. So the basic idea is create one triangle, repeat it across the frame, build the full pattern, use that pattern to reveal the video. That's the whole effect in one sentence. And once that clicks, the node graph stops feeling complicated. So the setup starts with a star node. And yeah, even though it says star, we are really using it as a triangle. That works because the node is set to 3 points. So instead of a multi-point star, it gives us a simple triangle-based shape. The important thing here is not the name of the node. It is the fact that this is the base graphic for the whole transition. This one shape gets reused everywhere else. In the settings, the triangle is small, solid, and angled, so it sits nicely once it becomes part of the full pattern. So this first node is basically the seed of the whole transition. Everything else grows out of this. Next up is the grid node. This is where the single triangle gets repeated across the frame. Instead of manually duplicating shapes over and over, the grid handles that for us in one step. So now we go from one triangle to a full field of triangles. That is where the transition really starts to take shape. At this stage, the pattern already feels graphic, but it still looks like one repeated layer. And that is why there is another branch in the setup, because one grid alone is not the full look yet. Now we get to the extra piece that makes this work better visually. There is a transform node on a second branch. That branch takes the triangle pattern and rotates it. So now we don't just have one repeated layer. We have another version of that layer coming in from a different orientation. And that is what helps build the more interlocked triangle layout. This part matters a lot, because without it, the result would feel flatter and more repetitive. With it, the frame fills out in a way that feels much more intentional. So this is not just a random extra node. It's one of the things that gives the transition its final look. After that, both triangle branches come together in the merge node. One branch is the original repeated pattern. The other is the transformed version. The merge combines them into one full result. And this is really the point where the transition stops looking like separate pieces and starts looking like one design graphic. You are no longer thinking about individual nodes here. You are looking at the finished triangle pattern that will drive the reveal. Once that combined pattern is ready, it goes into the render node. And the reason this step matters is simple. Up to this point, we have been building the triangle design as a shape-based setup. The render turns that result into something the next part of the composition can use more directly. So this is the handoff point. The triangle design is finished here. Now it becomes the actual reveal source for the video. That's a good way to think about this node. It's not changing the design. It's preparing the design for the compositing step. Now we bring in the footage. In this setup, the incoming clip is the bridge shot. So this is the image that the triangle pattern is going to reveal. And that's important to say clearly. The triangles are not just sitting on top as decoration. They are controlling how this clip appears. So once the bridge shot enters the flow, the setup shifts from shape building to actual transition building. This is the key compositing step. Kernel Booleans takes the rendered triangle pattern and uses it to control the alpha of the incoming video. So wherever the triangle pattern exists, the clip can show. Where it doesn't, the clip stays hidden. That is why the edit page result looks the way it does. At first, only parts of the bridge shot are visible through the pattern. Then more of the image comes through. And eventually, the frame becomes mostly revealed. This is the real magic of the setup. The triangle pattern is not just a graphic. It becomes the reveal mechanism. That is what turns a simple design into an actual transition. After that, the result passes through alpha multiply and then into media out. At this point, the main reveal work is already done. These last nodes are really about carrying that result cleanly back out of Fusion and into the edit page. So by the time we reach media out, the transition is already built. The only thing left is to play it back and see the full sequence. So if we watch the whole thing from the beginning, here's what's happening. It starts on black. Then the triangle pattern begins to appear. As the effect develops, more of the incoming bridge shot becomes visible through that triangle structure. Then the reveal keeps building until the shot is basically there. And by the end, the viewer is left on the full clip. That progression is what makes the transition feel nice. It doesn't just plop the next shot on screen. It introduces it through a pattern, lets that pattern do a reveal work, and then lands on the footage. And that's really the big takeaway from this setup. The effect looks detailed, but the logic is simple. Start with one triangle, turn it into a grid, add a transformed version for a fuller pattern, render it, use it to reveal the incoming clip. And that's the whole triangle transition.